Hey folks, welcome into Pro Football Ireland as we get ready for week 14 of the NFL season. Michael McQuaid, Mark Hogan, Jason Hedge on Ireland's best NFL outlet, Pro Football Irlanda at NFL Ireland on all forms of social media. 8-date tour coming up over the next few weeks in January, and one date change. Jeff Reinbold now in Limerick on Championship Sunday, linktr.ee/NFL Ireland. Mark, Kajay Martatu, my man. Kajay.
Good to be back. Missed Wednesday's show with James. Had to miss that one. But yeah, good to be back. This is my last podcast for over a week now. Well, for a week, I suppose.
Where are you going?
Over to the States. I didn't quite get Dallas Eagles across the line. We finished up last weekend's podcast and I kind of alluded to it. And yeah, when Linnea heard that those were my plans, it was a hard no that was given. So I will be like you, watching that on multiple TV screens, watching every angle, because it's going to be, I think we're going to talk about that, so I better not say too much more.
We are going to talk about it, but Jason, you think a man invested in the NFL as much as Mark Hogan would find?
Stop. I've got enough trips away now the last few weeks, and I've brought her along to Germany twice, and she said, I'm not doing that again. Michael McQuaid will show up and he won't stop talking NFL with him.
Here, I tell you what, and Jason, I'll bring you in this as well, mate. Like, we are now, I said it to Conor Mangan a few days ago on the Monday Morning Football podcast, we have now got, 5 regular season Sundays left before we kick into gear. We're weeks away from Vegas. This is the first weekend I've had at home since September the 23rd, and sweet Jesus, I am so excited. I want to say a massive thanks to everybody.
Well needed, yeah. I can't believe how fast this season has gone. Like, there's just the milestones. It felt like the midway point of the season was just 2 minutes ago, and now all of a sudden we're heading towards the final stretch. December football, where it matters most. I just can't believe it. I think it's because testament to how exciting the season has been and how much we've had to talk about. It's just absolutely flown by.
We're getting there. It's been a big week, and there's loads of different content coming your way, not just this week, but over the next few weeks. And massive thanks to everybody that's came to an event, that's listened to podcasts, that's engaged with this podcast, that's engaged with Ireland's only college football podcast as we reach a college football playoff also. But let's talk about the NFL. Let's not get bogged down on the college football playoff rankings. Mark Hogan with FSU.
I had a good laugh when I saw that, I have to say.
No, it's not funny. Hold on.
I've never understood that. But
that's like saying to the Eagles that their Super Bowl didn't count because...
Isn't that incredible? Seriously though, like, you're into it. I don't follow along, and I'm sure people do follow along to both, but like, you can have an undefeated season where your quarterback goes out with a day to go. And you like, that's insane. That's brutal. It's like, what were the other weeks for? Like, it all comes down to nothing.
I completely agree with you. And let's jump into the week 14 slate. We've got a double Monday Night Football, and it's really, really interesting as we go into the 14th week of the season. I was recording on a platform and I had a button by accident, but we're back. And the first topic that we're going to look at and talk about is the Green Bay Packers. And Mark, the Green Bay Packers is funny because, we'll talk about a huge Sunday night game coming up in week 14 this week in a bit. But last Sunday, I set up and watched the Packers against the Chiefs, and the Packers having the upset, not even an upset. They were that good, in my opinion. I've been really pleasantly surprised at how well not just their offenses played, but you look at special teams. Like, Dan Whelan looks like a guy that's been in the league for years. Their defense came up clutch as well against the Chiefs, and they now go into a situation where the state of the NFC allows them to believe in a playoff run. And you've got the rest of the league thinking, oh my God, have they got a guy in Jordan Love? It seems like it's a little bit too early to have that conversation with them. But when you're going up against a team in the New York Giants on Monday Night Football in week 14, there you go, lad. It doesn't even matter the Giants of the bye week. They're going 7-6 this week, yeah?
Yeah, look at their final 5 games you just talk about there, that the state of the NFC allows them to go on a run. Their final 5 games is all against the NFC, the Giants, the Bucks, the Panthers, the Vikings, the Bears. You'd imagine, bar a catastrophe with an injury, that they're going to be favoured for each of those games, and suddenly a team that was once 2-6 or 2-5, I should say, only had 1 loss the rest of the way, potentially has stormed into the playoffs. They took a massive leap in the power rankings this week because it was a statement. Look, when they beat the Lions last week or the week before Sunday, it was one good win up in a raucous Ford Field. But, they had to back it up, and they absolutely did that against Kansas City. And, I'm never the one to jump on talking about just the quarterback because I save it for moments like this. And you have to say that Jordan Love has looked fantastic. Benjamin Solak, if anyone pays attention to him, from The Ringer, does great film breakdowns. I was paying attention to one maybe Thursday last week. It was still pinned on his on his Twitter this week as late as Tuesday anyway. Maybe it's still there. I haven't checked again. But it just was a good breakdown of how Jordan Love is reading defenses like so fast that he has maybe a second and a half to decide that after the field has been wiped out and he has to go for the middle of the field. And I think that's it. Like, he has clicked now. Look, we might talk about what you said in a second, like, is he a franchise quarterback? That's a whole other thing, and that could be discussed in the offseason, honestly. But yeah, when they were hoping that was going to be what they saw at the very least, this offense, whether he was the future. So if we look at those games 1 through 7, when they had that 2-5 record, he was 28th in passer rating, 22nd in yards per attempt, 31st in completion percentage. Through this nice little run they've had, that they've been 4-1, he's gone to 4th in passer rating, 8th in yards per attempt, 13th in completion percentage. He's turned it around, and it is that they have Matt LaFleur, who was undefeated in December, which is insane. He's now 16-0. I just added on another 5 wins. He's going to be 21-0 by the time December is out. And it's like, when you have a genius play caller and then Jordan Love taking that massive step, I should say, I'm sorry, I have to let Jason in a second, Christian Watson last year had a fantastic end to the season. He started off quite slowly through that kind of first stretch of the game. He's going to have massive confidence. He was averaging through this first half of the season 40 yards per game. He's jumped up to 60, and he had 1 touchdown through the first 9 weeks, and now he's had 4 in the last 3. He's playing with massive confidence. And, if that's just one case study or one sample of how everyone's feeling, they're all playing with confidence.
And just going on top of that as well, Jason, for me, 2 elements. Shout out to Derek Harger, who put a tweet on Sunday night saying, "Romeo, take me somewhere we can beat Mahomes for Taylor Swift." Travis Kelce, where has he been over the last few weeks, boys? Jason, for me, it's about his ball placement. And you look at so many quarterbacks that come into the league, and there's hype and there's hype and there's hype. But he's had the time to sit behind a guy in Aaron Rodgers, and he looks so like Aaron Rodgers when he's in the pocket under pressure. That game last week against the Chiefs was just an example of how good he can be. But frankly, going into week 14 this weekend, there's no excuses against a lackluster, in my opinion, really poor New York Giants team, never mind offense. This is a huge opportunity for the Packers to make a run. Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's kind of a gone off trend almost, the way things used to be done, with Jordan Love having those few years to sit back and learn from a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Nowadays, nobody has any patience anymore. You want your rookie quarterbacks, especially when they're picked in the first round, hitting the ground running and playing from day one. But it does seem like he's learned a lot in that time. This past week against, a few days ago against Kansas City, it was almost poetic, the way that he had his first start against them and struggled. And now a couple of years later, he said after the game, he had this game circled on his calendar for a long time. And you could absolutely see how far he's come in that time. Even from the start of the season, it's the youngest team in the league, and it is always going to be bumpy. They started pretty strongly in the first couple of games, but it never felt too sustainable. Love's stats were pretty good, but there was a lot of, 2-yard passes being ran for 70 yards, and it didn't really feel like it was him actually doing it. But these last couple of games, it's absolutely been Jordan Love excelling, dealing with the blitz well, going through his reads, avoiding pressure when it comes, which is something that he struggled with early on. So it's just great to see how he's progressing, and testament to Matt LaFleur, as Mark was saying, the job he's doing. With Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback the last few years, that was the easy part. They got their 12, 13 win seasons. Didn't get it done in January, unfortunately, with him. But this is a true test of a head coach building a young team from the ground up. And all you want to see is consistent progress. And they're absolutely delivering that these last few weeks. Last 5 games of the season as well. One of the easier schedules out there, I think. They have the Giants, Bucks, Panthers, Vikings, and the Bears is their last game. So 6-6 now. Absolutely no reason they shouldn't be making the playoffs. I'm guessing they're odds on at this stage. And for a team that I think everyone had forgotten about and wrote off after the first 7 weeks or so, they're looking like a legitimate threat after beating the Lions and the Chiefs. They could have something to say in January.
It has to be said as well that, like, when you're proving it against Kansas City, it's that we know Kansas City to be a very good pass defense, and to be able to have success and the success that he did, I think that's what's really impressive. But to pump the brakes on, what you alluded to there, Michael, about like how good is this guy? Like, he looks like Aaron Rodgers. The
Look
last
at you
tweet that
pumping the brakes. Join the love army, mate.
No, I'm so into him as a young play call, but this is the whole, like, week to weakness of the NFL that drives me crazy. That, like, that he's used this a few weeks ago, and now apparently he's not. Don't get me wrong, I think he's great. But the last tweet that I saw that mentioned Aaron Rodgers' name before that game on Sunday was talking about the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Will Gavin had put him down as number 4. And suddenly we're saying that Jordan Love looks like the 4th greatest quarterback in the eyes of Manny of all time. I was like, he looks fantastic. But it's like, that's where people get frustrated. It's like Overton or Makeda with United back in the day. It's like a wonder kid comes on the scene, and it's like, yeah, we were into it for a week, and then we start slating him again. It's the same with what we've gone through with Drake London, or sorry, not Drake London, the Desmond Ritter. Like, or and all these. Mac Jones has had his ups and downs. So it's like, it has to be over.
Hold on. Are we really going to say, and this is where we get...
But for how long did we go on? This year, going into this season, we said that Desmond Ritter had proved it over 9 games last year, that offense should be class. 2 years before that, Mac Jones was after coming off the Rookie of the Year, and we said that he was going to be the future. And it's like, they're after having 3 weeks now that they're after winning, and we're suddenly, putting him as a franchise, wondering how much money he's going to get paid. And it's like, yeah, he is going to get paid, but it's like, there's no point getting ahead of us. We can all get excited in the offseason. Like, just take it week to week, because Brock Purdy, we were going to bench him only 3 or 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, and like, it's the short-termism of the NFL, and it's a perfect interlude to our next topic, which I'll bring on in a second. Desmond Ritter, look at their record. Look at where they are going in. Wasn't nice at all against the Jets last week in week 13, but after I watched a bit of the tape on Wednesday, and I thought that the way that Ritter controlled the game in certain situations, he's so rough and rugged around the edge. They just need to find a way to get him to that next level. I'm certainly not out on him, but it shows you that, like, I think going back to Dara Carter again, even he was tweeting about saying, like, how much are we paying Jordan Love? It's just that whole short-termism, and people are talking about Brock Purdy now, a guy that rocked up in week 13 to Philly in an outfit from Nordstrom, and people were slagging him, saying he dresses like your mom's best friend or your dad's best friend. I mean, if you're getting to that stage where you're slagging the guy over what he wears, I mean, I hate to think what people are saying about me, boys, to be honest with you. But the way, Mark, it's lazy journalism for us to sit here and talk about their win over the Eagles. I think it's to talk about the perception of this team instead.
This is the 49ers.
The Niners and the evolution of this offense, because you think of a few weeks ago when they were in Minnesota and they got not blown out, but the crowd, everything was against them. And a lot of people would have been forgiven, including us, for thinking bye week coming up, they're in trouble. And they have come back from that. Not just come back from it, but they have turned it around to an extent where they now look lethal. Now, yes, it's one game, and yes, there are different elements in the game where Philly could have turned it on more, especially in the first quarter of that game. But on paper, and what we've seen last week in week 13, the combination that Brock Purdy has with Debo and other guys on the offense, it looks like this is a team to beat, not just in the NFC, but in the NFL overall. What's your thoughts, Marcus?
Yeah, and when you mentioned the NFC, the Cowboys went into this game having scored 40 points in 3 of their last 4, and the other game in that 4, they'd scored 30 points. Philadelphia was coming off wins against Miami, Kansas City, the Cowboys, and the Bills. So when you then, the 49ers, look and say, okay, so when we played Dallas and Philadelphia, not only did we beat them, but we beat them by a combined 84-29. We blew the doors off our closest competitors within the NFC. That's what makes them competitive, so outstanding. Now, you mentioned the Vikings game, and I remember a bit of frustration from my end that week, listening to everyone saying that Brock Purdy's days are numbered because he was after having those 2 late interceptions in the game, whereas I pointed to, well, he wasn't the one that fumbled in the end zone. It was Christian McCaffrey in the first quarter, but because of time of game when it happened, everyone was dumping on Brock Purdy. And I thought it was completely unfair. And it's like, look, the thing that we have to say about the 49ers is they are blessed with health. When you look at what's going on, particularly in the AFC or even particularly in the AFC North, the NFC hasn't been as hard hit, and the 49ers of all teams still have their starting offense pretty much intact. I saw a stat that in the 3 games that Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams missed time, that was when they went and lost 3 games. Other than that, they've been unstoppable. So it's like, yeah, they are blessed with health. They are able to keep a Christian McCaffrey on the field, so everyone is paying attention to him. That opens up the field for Deebo Samuel, who has more yak yards than anyone in the league per attempt. George Kittle, when he's given the ball, he has yak yards. That opens up the field for Brandon Ayuk, who has an insane catch rate, and it's like he has an insane yards per ball thrown to him. Let alone when then you see Purdy scrambling out of the backfield. And this, by the way, is all masterminded by one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, Kyle Shanahan, run the whole show. He has his whole arsenal there. So it's like, yeah, of course it's explosive because they've been able to stay insanely healthy, and they've eliminated those turnovers that we were given out about them, 5 weeks ago, that we said the end was 9.
Jason, does it give you hope as a Cardinals fan that Kyler Murray can come back in and rejuvenate an offense quickly? In all seriousness, so Brock Purdy continues to defy logic, and I feel if he was a different player, he'd be getting even more plaudits because there's guys like him. There's guys, frankly, like the whole different conversation. Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey are not being looked at as viable MVP contenders because they don't play quarterback. The way that McCaffrey's played this season, but more so the way that this offense has played this season, Jason, has been a joy to watch, man. And I have a feeling that we could be talking about them on Radio Row for a long time in a few weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. They could be favourites now. I imagine they are favourites for the NFC after that drubbing of the Eagles. Tough one. That's the conversation right now regards Purdy. Should he be in the MVP conversation, or does his supporting cast take away from what he's doing? Easy to forget that a couple of years ago we were talking about Mr. Irrelevant here. Like, it's just a bizarre story that he's even in this position, and he couldn't have ended up in a better situation. If any of the 31 other teams in the league drafted him, I think there's a good chance that we've never even heard of this guy's name, and we don't even know who he is as a player. So it's just absolutely insane the way it's all worked out, and he's absolutely performing at a high level. 9.6 yards per attempt. That's a full yard clear of Tua, who's running an offense quite like probably the most comparable offense to the 49ers in terms of being a well-oiled machine and weapons everywhere. And it's not just that; it's completion percentage, total yards, touchdowns. This guy is on pace to break a lot of franchise records with the 49ers, and the type of quarterbacks they've had down the years. I will say it's modern times now, so take that with a pinch of salt, but he's doing exactly what they've asked him to do. And when you have 4 absolute weapons, in a good way, I know absolute weapons can be taken as an insult as well. You have George Kittle, who still has it. Ayuk is one of the best young receivers in the league, on pace for well over 1,000 yards. I think he's just under it right now. Deebo Samuel, my headache player of the week, 3 touchdowns. Just throw that in there. The offense looks different when he's there, in a much different way. I won't compare him to Tyreek Hill, the player, because they are very different in what they do. But I think the similarity there is when they're both on the field, moving them around just makes the defense panic. And they're a player who opens up things for the other guys on the team. And then of course you have McCaffrey, who's right up there in the MVP conversation. That people were saying they overpaid for a running back when they made that trade last year, but that's looking at one of the best trades of all time. Certainly one of the best in-season trades of all time right now. The one thing I'll say, Mark, they're healthy, absolutely. If there's a team that deserves to be healthy for a change, it's probably the 49ers. They've had a lot of injury bugs over the last couple of years. But they've been running McCaffrey into the ground as well. They haven't been holding him back. So it's interesting to see how a player like him carries that deep into December and into January now. They'll want to be watching it. They're even rushing him out there for to keep his touchdown streak going a couple of weeks back. Want to be a bit smarter with some decisions, I think, in that regard. But overall, look, the whole unit is firing on all cylinders. It's just one of those offenses that we'll probably remember in years to come if they can get it all done in the Super Bowl in terms of just pure talent. And they better enjoy it when they can, because if Purdy keeps this up for the next couple of years, then they'll have to pay him, and naturally some of that talent will have to disappear.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point about Christian McCaffrey, because he has 1,000 yards on the ground for the first time as a 49ers running back has since 2014 when it was Frank Gore. So it does speak volumes about how, because they have been the last few years we've gotten used to them plugging in so many different guys, and we did wonder about what was Eli Mitchell's future going to be last year when they made the trade, and it's no, Christian McCaffrey has taken over all the touches.
Just going on what we're talking about Purdy and the eventuality of being paid. If we know Kyle Shanahan, Purdy will end up being traded somewhere else, and they'll draft somebody in the 7th round and bring them in again, because he just loves his system. He just loves his system quarterbacks. He never respects them. I think regardless of the situation, the way that Trey Lance was treated in San Francisco was a disgrace. So until they win a Super Bowl, we'll talk then. Can I give a massive shout out also to the Irish faithful? The Niners. I got a big watch party this weekend.
Oh, good thing you did that. Yeah, 100%.
I'm
sorry.
Probably not going to get to it, unfortunately, but I'm going to try to. But it's going to be hard to get out of the house. My wife is like, "You're not leaving the house to Vegas," so we'll see. Can I also just let people know that we're not presented by Guinness? I have that exact same jumper, but we're not presented by Guinness yet. Not presented.
I wondered would I get away with it, but I was actually wearing a Cardinals top, and Jason is wearing a Cardinals top. So I said, well, we both can't wear a Cardinals top going on the broadcast. And I think I might have worn the Cardinals top last week. So yeah, I have a rag lying around.
We've actually, me and Mark have a rotation. We've a schedule made out. We wear Cardinals, which we...
See, I'm gone off my holidays, so I have to keep all the clothes that I want to wear on my hollybops clean. That kind of way. So it's I won't be wearing the Guinness one. Imagine being the Irish lad that wears a Guinness top over in America.
I think if you're going to wear it, that's where you wear it, to be honest with you. But look, each of their own. You're heading on your hollybobs, and I presume that you're not on next week. But I will say this: I'm just delighted, Jason, that we've now got a guy that's doing the live Twitter on Sunday Night Football. What a game this is!
Yeah,
what a game this is. Dallas against Philly in Dallas, and I'm just going to put it out straight up right now. This is not a boring let's make a pick, because we're not Adam Schefter. Nobody cares less who we're going to pick. But I'll tell you right straight up right now, the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football are going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles by 10 to 12 to 18 points. I think the Cowboys put a show on Sunday Night Football and then explode over the next few weeks. I think this is the week the Cowboys go mad in the NFC. I think for Philly long term, last week in week 13, Mark, could have been the best thing to happen for them, because it's a bit of a wake up call. But this is what we live for. These sort of games. Jerry World, Sirianni coming in. This is a massive game. And I'll tell you what, I watched 3 quarters of Sunday Night Football last week before my body coped and fell asleep. I'm not going to have a problem setting up to watch this. This is a bigger game for me at the moment in terms of enjoying it as a neutral than any other game this season, including week 13 with the Niners and Eagles. You cannot beat December football, I don't care who you support, when the Dallas Cowboys are involved, because it's always that hype train. And let's see if Dak Prescott has another good week this week. The whole MVP talk just keeps going and going, man. 100%. Huge game on Sunday.
On Sunday Night Football too, we are seeing a year where the NFL keeps on setting massive viewership numbers, and the Eagles have been part of the top 3 of the top 5, and I don't think the Cowboys have been in one yet. And it's this surely rockets to the top, because it's massive, and it's for the NFC East crown, or sorry, not for the crown, for the lead for now. It's definitely an interesting one. So you mentioned your headache there a second, Jason. I said going into the 49ers Eagles game, it was going to be about the run game and how the two teams were going to be able to deal with the opposing ground defenses. And the Eagles were not able to get the ball going at all. And it really stymied their entire offense. I mean, what was the number? They had 18 carries for 46 yards as a team on the ground, and that was padded by Jalen Hurts when he did move the ball. So they won't have to go against that, but they're going to get the same question that was posed the last time is going to be posed again. How does Dallas deal with AJ Brown? The last time he only had 66 yards on 7 catches. Devontae Smith then had 3 catches for 51 yards. And those two guys have been playing fantastic, but obviously those aren't fantastic numbers. But then when you flip it on the other side, CeeDee Lamb had an absolute massive game, 191 yards when these guys played a few weeks ago. And I have to kind of say, like, we talked last week about like mindset, and I think that the Cowboys have to win the game, because if they fall at home in AT&T in Sunday Night Football against a team that they really, really want to beat, I think that's definitely going to like figure it out. Or sorry, it's going to play out. But I have to say that when you listen back to what Dak Prescott said after these teams met the last time, he referenced a game of inches or some variation of that 12 or 13 times, because they were trying to stay positive. They said Luke Shoemaker, the tight end, he had a touchdown that was ruled back because he was an inch out of bounds when the ball crossed the line. And you can look at the team and say that they gave up pass interference calls in the third quarter when Philadelphia beat them, but they didn't allow a first down, let alone a score in the fourth quarter. So it's like how this team responds is definitely what I'm interested in now. And I do think that they have to get it done at home.
It's a huge week this week, Jason, in this game.
Yeah, look, we talked about the Cowboys last week and how they haven't beaten a true contender just yet. Well, this is exactly the type of game where they can go out and prove it in front of maybe a record-breaking viewership. They beat Seattle on Thursday Night Football, of course. Great offensive performance there. Gave up a lot defensively. They're always fun to watch, these Cowboys. You know, it's always going to be a bit of a shootout with them. But yeah, I was going to mention that game, the previous game against Philadelphia as well, how the Cowboys will have come away from that feeling like they should have won it. There was that goal line stand that the Cowboys came up just short. They came up short on fourth down earlier in the quarter as well. Passed up on a field goal opportunity, half a yard short on 2-point conversion. There was multiple things that just went against them down the stretch of that game, where they will have come away thinking, yeah, if just one of them worked out, they would have beaten the Eagles. So they'll be riled up for it. No shortage of motivation. And the Eagles have just come through a bit of a gauntlet. You know, they've played, beginning with that last Cowboys game, they've played the Chiefs, the Bills, and the 49ers. 3-1 is a hugely impressive record in those 4 games for the Eagles. But it wears you down. Like, you know, this last game against the 49ers, it gets tough to keep getting up for it week in, week out against the best in the league. And I think we saw the repercussions of that this past Sunday. So it is tough to keep it going. They have been outgained as well, yardage-wise, in these last few games. So they've probably won a few games that they maybe shouldn't have, at least looking at the box score, which is a very simplified way of doing it. But that's a talent in itself to win a game that's coming down to the wire. I think ultimately, if the Cowboys do win this weekend, and I have them picked as well, Mick, I think they will get it done. And if they go top of the NFC East, I think we're still going to see Philadelphia win the division at the end of the year, simply because of the schedules. Eagles have just come out of that gauntlet run, and the Cowboys are just about to go into a bit of their own gauntlet here, whereas Philadelphia are finishing the season against the Giants twice and Arizona. So in terms of this weekend, I fancy the Cowboys, but overall, long-term view of this division, I think the Eagles will be happy with the way things stand right now. They've had their tough stretch. They're about to have some easier games before the end of the season. Get right, because they're going to need to be rearing to go come January.
Here, and I have to say, and it's so, fitting that you're after saying that, Jason, about who is going to win out. If the Eagles lose this, the Cowboys go top of the NFC East, but the Eagles still control their own destiny, because the way that it works is obviously it'll go head-to-head record, which they'll have split. And if you say that they win out, then they'll have the same record within the division. So then it would go to conference, and it will come down to one single game. And that was a week 3 loss by the Dallas Cowboys to the Arizona Cardinals. That's the only game that will split them. And it's like, that of all games, like, that was one that the Cowboys should have had, and they just got the doors blown out them. To show that that's why it's so important that you look after those kind of teams when you can. If it all comes down and they have to go on the road, and maybe potentially Philadelphia has a first round bye, maybe not now that the 49ers are playing so well, that's insane.
One thing I'll just add there as well. On Monday, we had the news that Shaq Leonard chose Philadelphia over Dallas after visiting both teams. So clearly, signing on your contract, he's going to go with the team that he thinks has the best chance at the Super Bowl. So Shaq Leonard, at least, believes Philadelphia is the way to go. So, make of that what you will.
Let's make of things that we will by talking very quickly about something else this week. I had the pleasure in May to meet a guy called Lachlan Hart, who works as an independent sound engineer producer, but also with a major company also, which we're not allowed to say, I don't think, in this podcast. However, back to the real story. There is a podcast mini-series called Corny launching this week. It's launched already by the time you've heard this in your ears. Do check it out on your local podcast provider. It's all about Neil O'Donoghue, a guy born in Dublin, played for Round Towers, GA, in Clondalkin, who went to the US. I don't want to give too much away. Really interesting background how you got to the States. And he ended up playing in the NFL, the Bills, the Bucks, and the formerly St. Louis Cardinals. I don't want to give any more away than that because his journey is incredible. Obviously a kicker, the ups, the downs, 4-part mini-series podcast. I have listened, obviously in bias, Mark, because I've took part in this and spoke to Neil at length for hours on this podcast to get it over the line. And just a massive thanks to allow us to be involved. It was great to be there on Wednesday to launch the podcast, and we appreciate Lachlan's support for Pro Football Ireland. It's funny because until Dan Whelan, he was the first or the last Irish-born player in the NFL. It just shows you how much, Mark, that the NFL has grown in Ireland, that we're talking about a mini-series as good as, if not better, than the Andrew Luck one, in my opinion. I think it's sensational.
Yeah, bumped into Lachlan myself the other day because I work for a said unnamed company, and I bumped into him in the corridor, and we were just kind of talking about the release. And I do believe it is going to be publicly available. It's not going to be behind a paywall, if people are wondering about that, because the branding, if you look out for Corny, it might suggest that it's not. Don't get confused, because I was confused about that. I did listen, had to stop myself from listening to all 4 parts. Really, I had to stop myself from listening to all 4 parts before doing this, because unlike you, Michael, I'm not disciplined enough not to give the whole thing away. But I will say, it starts, the first few seconds, it starts with, booming narration of an American man talking about the game, and here trots onto the field Neil O'Donoghue. And then it goes and it has Dublin voices and Irish voices talking about not even about the NFL, talking about Dublin at a time when Neil's parents his mom going to World War II, and how they meet the father, and what Dublin was like at that time, how you couldn't play foreign sports, and how his dad got in trouble for that, and then Neil himself got in trouble for that. And it's like, the romantic in me is like an Irish person. I love hearing those tales. But how this starts to build towards a professional career in the NFL, it is a magnificent podcast. It is absolutely stunning. I can't wait to get through the remaining parts. And what a time for it to happen as well, as Daniel Whelan comes onto the scene.
It's pretty cool, Jason. Have you had a chance to put your ears in yet? Down in Cork?
Absolutely. And I was very, very impressed. Just like Mark, I could have sat there and binged all 4 in one sitting, but I restrained myself. The whole production of it was brilliant. I was hooked from that first moment. As soon as the Cardinals were mentioned as well, of course, they got off on the right foot there. as a corny, I don't know, does that corny nickname ever translate to the NFL? Would Americans know him by that at all? I'm not sure. But
I think that's he got the nickname both at home and abroad as well. It's funny because Laughlin's talked to Neil's brother Coley or Coley, I'm led to believe that's a Dublin name, and I spoke to Neil for 4 hours and I never asked him about his nickname.
So it's so funny, Pro Football Reference has all nicknames under the sun. I think like Tom Brady is put down as like the Godfather, even though no one's ever called him that before. Neil O'Donoghue does have Cornelius Joseph Dennis O'Donoghue down, but no other reference, which is the one nickname that is escaped Pro Football Reference.
We'll need to email them about that. But my main two takeaways from the whole podcast and his whole story, because I didn't know enough about him, to be honest, and I wish I knew more, because normally in Ireland we're so good at celebrating our athletes, and to have someone as rare as playing in the NFL, this is a great way to learn more about him. And it's great now that the likes of Dan Whelan is getting his deserved recognition as he's over there. But my two main takeaways from that first podcast is, firstly, the importance of strong family and role models to make it as an athlete. And you'll hear about the type of woman his mother was, and his dad just sounds like class crack, to be honest. And then secondly is the importance of luck, which, when you hear the story about how he got his break in America, which was to do with Coley, his brother, it's just crazy how these things all have to work out for someone to make it. And I can't wait to get on with the rest of it now.
You can search Corny, CORNY.
We have to say, like, we're not, being paid or anything
we're not
that out there.
Genuinely, it was a voluntary thing completely.
It was class. It's class that this is out there. It's kind of one of those that I'm hoping maybe introduces other people to the NFL, because they're just so intrigued by it as a sport and as a league for the NFL specifically. But like, genuinely, we're not being paid. We knew that this was coming out. I said we should have a listen to it, and then we were like, we have to talk about it and get ahead of it almost, because people should absolutely check it out.
Thanks to Lachlan for letting me be a very small part of it. It's been pretty cool. Getting the chance to speak to Neil was awesome as well, especially so close to the time when Dan Whelan got his chance in the NFL. So that was pretty cool. That's how I got the quote. Everyone's like, how the hell did you get that quote from Neil O'Donoghue? That's how. Thank you to Neil and his partner for emailing me as well. Headache of the week. Monday Night Football, there's two games. One of them is the Dolphins playing the Titans in week 14. And look, the Dolphins are a sincere, considerable threat in the NFL, never mind the AFC. But I tell you what, boys, I think they win the game. But Derrick Henry may have cleared the concussion protocol by the time that this is finished recording, but he is still in the concussion protocol. And when you've got a guy called Tajay Spears there, honestly, I think he could be a real factor in this game. The Dolphins, I feel, will win the game comfortably, but you're going to have sparks where I feel that Will Levis could struggle. The quarterback position could struggle for the Titans. And if you give the opportunity to Spears, who had 13 touches in the final 4 drives of the game in week 13, he had 20 touches overall for 88 yards in week 13. I don't see any reason why he can't hit 70, 80, 100 yards in week 14, even against a Dolphins team that has a stout defense with Vic Fangio. What do you reckon, Mark?
Reckon regards Tajay Spear or about Derrick Henry, because I am interested in that game from the point of view that Indianapolis is sitting, I think, in the 6th seed in the AFC right now, which is insane. And they were only able to just get by Tennessee. And I was kind of like, I'm going to hear about it now in the power rankings that I won't put Indianapolis up further. But it's like, you won 31-28 against the Tennessee Titans. I hope the teams are able to sweep them away a bit more. Even though, Will Levis probably had a decent enough game against the Indianapolis Colts. But yeah, I hope the Dolphins are able to put them away a lot easier than the Colts did. In terms of my own headache, I kind of make this make sense to everyone else. It makes sense to me, at least. The Jags are playing the Browns this weekend. The Browns, I think there's an air of inevitability around their season that Joe Flacco had probably the second best performance we've seen from a quarterback in Cleveland this year, and they weren't able to get across the line because it's all on the defense. We saw Myles Garrett playing with an injured shoulder, and they just have all the work to do. At the end of the day, it all falls back on them. Sean McVay is the headache here. He opened up what I think might be the blueprint for beating the Browns. They had Matt Stafford had 3 touchdowns on Sunday against them. No sacks, no interceptions, a 70-yard long. And it was just nullify the pass rush by getting the ball off and, using the air game. It's like, don't mess around with anything else. Just beat them that way. And Doug Peterson is an equally as creative offensive play caller. So when the Browns play the Jags this week, I want to see how that goes for the Jags offense. Will they, it's known as a stout Browns defense. Do teams know how to play it now? Because you're not too worried about the Browns offense coming onto the field. And it's that Myles Garrett, who, now I'm pretty sure TJ Watt's the favorite for the offense or defensive player of the year, because they can kind of see that bit of regression creeping in for the Browns because there's just too much to do. They've had to deal with an insane amount of injuries.
Jay, he is. I call Jay Bell. Jay Bell. Jay, he is. Who have you got for your headache of the week?
I like that. That's thinking outside of the box with Mark's headache there. Well, we talked about the positives in Green Bay and what's been going well for them these last few weeks, but I do think their rush defense is still a concern, and it is the biggest weakness on the overall team. Isaiah Pacheco on Sunday Night Football last week went for over 100 against them, an average 6.1 yards per carry, and overall on the season, Green Bay is conceding 136 rush yards per game. They're going to New York this week, and New York, of course, have a certain running back called Saquon Barkley. So I think that will be their ultimate headache towards winning this game. The Giants are becoming a bit of a feisty team behind the man himself. There's no word for it, he says, but Tommy DeVito. Jesus, that would sound weird on the audio podcast. But Saquon Barkley is going to cause a headache in Green Bay. They need to figure out how to stop him because they don't have much margin for error. They've got to win games like this if they're going to make the playoffs. And it'll start with stopping Saquon.
It will. Week 14 of the NFL season. And always good to hear your headaches. Do let us know, if folks, if you have a headache of your choice. Maybe it's my lovely dulcet Tyrone tone. I don't know. The negative comments have stopped anyway from some prick. So I'm happy enough, Mark, at the minute. So we'll send them more there. Not get in trouble for that. But we've got 5 more regular Sundays left of the NFL season. And before we know it, Mark will be buying everybody Starbucks in Vegas because apparently it's $27 a round at the minute. So not looking forward to that, but looking forward to getting it. Yeah, it's going to be tight that week. I just remember last week, I just hope the New Orleans committee have got donuts and all in the morning because I'm going to be stocking up on that, to be honest with you. I can't wait. That's next for us. If you're on the island of Ireland, north or south of the border, wherever you're from, whatever you call it, I don't care. Come to one of our shows, linktr.ee/Reinbold or /NFL Ireland as well. Jeff is coming to Galway, Cork, Limerick, Dundalk, Belfast, Derry,
and the big one,
Dublin and Dungannon. So keep her lit, boys. We're obviously presented by EA Sport, the official betting partner of the NFL in Ireland and the UK. Boys, I gotta go. Mark, safe travels, and to everybody else, have a lovely week 14. Jay Hayes, I'll see you in Belfast on Sunday at the Christmas markets. For everybody else, have a great week. Talk to you soon.